So I was recalling in 2007, we had weekly sessions for faculty on new tools. And we had one on Twitter that I gave. And a certain member of the faculty who later went on to administration but is not here right now, if you know who I mean, said, okay, Jeff, that's cute, showing us Twitter, but what the hell does it have to do with journalism? And as we talked about it, to the faculty's credit, we started listing on the whiteboard things that it could have to do with journalism. At the end, Sarah said, okay, I'll buy it. So here we are again with Mastodon. I'm not one of those who believes that Twitter has been a cesspool from the beginning. I think it's been useful, but it is now turning to crap. And so people are trying to find alternatives. You might have heard about Post.news. I won't be talking about that today. There are a few others. Mastodon is very interesting because it's an entirely different architecture for social. And I'll explain this as I go. What I'm going to try to do today is first show you how to use it and then give you the context of how it's architected and so on. But let me just start by giving you this preview. Mastodon is not one company. It is not one service. It is federated. It is 7,500 separate servers run by different organizations around the world. They are federated, that is to say they connect. If you connect on one server and I find Graciela on a different server, I can connect with her and talk with her as if we were on the same place, as if we were in Twitter, but it's not Twitter. This is to say it cannot be bought by one person. It can't be controlled by one person. It is open source and federated and not for profit. And so it's an entirely different structure, and that's what interests me most. It was started in 2016 by a Russian-German guy named Eugen Rochko, and he created the software for this, which again is open source. It is run on 7,500 different places. And a lot of the people who gravitated to it first were vulnerable populations, people who felt vulnerable elsewhere, especially when it comes to different abilities. And so they felt more comfortable here. And so there's a culture that's been built up over that time that now there's this huge rush of people coming in and kind of frightening some of the natives and having an impact on what's there and what's not there. We'll get to that. But first, I just want to show you Mastodon. Before I start, everything I cover is in this post on Medium that I wrote. If you go to jeffjarvis.medium.com, you don't have to take notes. It's all in there. Everything is in there. Plus, the philosophical stuff about federation is in this post on Medium. So you can see both as you go, all right? So here's what confuses people about Mastodon. Because there's 75 different places you can join, you think, oh my God, what do I pick? And people get very confused about that. It doesn't really matter. It doesn't matter because you can talk to anyone on any server in Mastodon, number one. Number two, if you find a place that you like better, you can move. But this confuses people because they don't know, what do I do? And it acts as a speed bump. If you go to joinmastodon.org, which is that first URL up there on the whiteboard, you come to this page and it will tell you, it's easy. Some people say it's not. If you want to create an account, it gives you a list of servers. Federated Press, Tutfunami Tech, creators.social, and you still get confused, right? So what I'm going to suggest is that you might want to write down some off this list, and I'll explain it. I'm on mastodon.social, so I'm at Jeff Jarvis at mastodon.social when you're on. That was started by Eugen. It's a general server. It's huge. It's kind of the newbie place. It's closed now because it got so damn busy. So here are some other general ones. MSTDN, Mastodon without the vowels, social. Mastodon.world. Social.vivaldi.net is one of the few commercially run, company-run sites. Ohi.social. Zirk.us, I find interesting. Now we'll get to a few journalistic ones, two of them. Journa.host. You might have heard that out of Town Night, I helped Adam Davidson, ex-NPR, ex-New York Times, ex-New Yorker. He wanted to start a server for journalists. And so in that place, people are verified as journalists to get on. So it's a community of journalists. They are admitting faculty right now, but they are overloaded, so they're not yet admitting students, but they will. Newsy.social is not closed in that same way. You don't have to apply to get on. You can go right on. That's people who are in journalism and interested in news. There's also blacktwitter.io, epicure.social for foodies. And there's 7,500 of these. So you pick one. Some, like Journa, will ask you to apply and ask you who you are. Others will just say, pick a name and get going. All right? Doesn't matter. You can change. Don't let that stop you. Okay? So now we get to what it looks like. Oh, before this, you could go to any server before you've even joined. So if you go to journa.host and just type in that URL, you'll come up with this page. And I can look here and I can click on local and I will see the latest posts by people who are using this server. And I can go over here and say, learn more about this server. Well, it's run by this team, this email address. It has this information, it has these rules, and it has moderated servers. That is to say that there are nasty, bad servers in Mastodon. Gab is one of them. Most everybody does not link to it, does not federate to it. And they tend to list those servers there. So you can go to journa.host or Newsy and look around and see what it is. But I'm going to imagine that you've already come on and you're in. So this is what it looks like when you get in. This is my account. So I think it's a little ugly to my mind because I don't like dark mode. I hate dark mode. Now, I know I'm weird that way, but even if you love dark mode, the purple against black is kind of hard to read. So the first thing I would suggest you do when you get on is go over here at the bottom right to Preferences. I'm going to click on Preferences. Again, this is all in my post. I'm going to switch to light mode. And I'm also going to right here click Enable Advanced Web Interface. You see that? I click those two things, go back to Mastodon, and it didn't work. Jesus Christ. Hold on. Advanced Web Interface. Save changes. Yeah, I know. I should know better. I teach this crap. Okay. There we go. Now I go back to Mastodon. And let there be light. So this looks a lot like TweetDeck, right? And what I'm going to do is going to describe everything that's here so you just understand the full functionality of Mastodon. Any questions so far?
Wait, I can't do that unless I...
You join. You got to join, which you will do in about an hour, right? Because Jelani Cobb is already here. So we got to be here. All right. So the home feed is everyone I follow. I can choose to follow people. And what I get there is the posts that they write, the posts that they boost, otherwise known as retweet, the posts that they, favorite doesn't show up there. If I favorite, if I put a star on, that just tells the writer that I like it, right? So that's everything that's in my home feed right there. And that's what you tend to use when you're here, okay? Let me get my notes. That's basically the closest thing there is to Twitter. Oh, I forgot something else, sorry. When you join, the first thing you should do before you follow anyone is fill out your profile. I have a picture there, I have a header there, I say, here's who I am. The reason for that is that once you start following people, and they want to say, oh, who is this Greg David? Maybe I'll follow him back. If I can't see anything about Greg, then I'm going to say, well, he's just some crazy anonymous guy. So if you put in your bio there, it shows the care that you say, this is who you care you are. So you can follow people. We'll get to how to find people in a second. All right, so here is the home feed. This notifications column, it generally comes like this. I should have fixed this before. Okay, so it has all or mentions. And I used this for a while, and it's confusing because what this all is absolutely everything that reacts to you. Everybody who boosts a post of yours, everybody who favorites a post of yours, everyone who writes a post with your @ name in it, everybody who wants to follow you. It's one long, confusing mess. Then somebody told me, no, you go to the settings, this is in my post, you display all categories, and now I get choices. So everything, this explains what's in notifications. All is what I just showed you. That is people who have written to me. Okay, that is responses to me. That's somebody I just offered to help out with her syllabus. That's people talking about all kinds of things. So these are responses to me. These are people who favorited my posts, who said, oh, I like that. I'm going to send a message to Jeff that he liked it. He or she liked it. This is boosts. This is people who retweeted me. And I can, unfortunately, it doesn't bring them all together. Every single post comes in. So that's why it's a little disturbing. This is polls, if I did a poll, but I'm not Elon Musk, so I'm not doing any. I'll explain the house button in a minute. And then this is notification of people who have followed me. All right? Now, I get some choices when I want to follow them. I'm going to look down and find somebody who's just vigilant at Twitter.social. I don't really know who that is. I'm going to skip by that. Who's this? Expert in mid-stage venturing. Maybe that's more for Jeremy than me. I saw somebody here earlier who was interested. Where'd he go? Oh, here we go. Amardeep Singh teaches English at Lehigh, is director of graduate studies. Okay, I think I might want to follow him. All I do is click on follow. And there he is. Or I could have clicked on this and I followed him. If I want to follow Ben Jones, I click on that. Turn it on, turn it off. Yell unfollow. All right, so now I've followed him. So I can look and I can see what Amardeep has written. I can see who he is and who he's associated with. I can also hit this bell here. If I hit that bell, then every single time he posts, I will be notified in this column. So my son, Jake Jarvis, has a bell next to his name. I see every single time he posts. He can't get away with shit. I can also direct message him. I can mute him. I can block him. I can report him. I can block his whole domain. If I think that he's a front for a whole mess of people, I can get rid of the entire server and block that. Importantly, the moderation, which we've seen is such an issue on Twitter, is done here entirely by volunteers, entirely server by server. So the person who runs your server will block Gab because Gab is Nazis. You can block individuals. You can report people to your server to get them to block it or to block the entire server. So far, I find it works pretty well, but everybody's afraid what's going to happen at scale. Okay. So if I click on this hamburger menu up here on the upper left, it opens this column, which is called Getting Started. In here are some more options to go through really quickly. Direct messages. I can see everything that I've sent, and everybody has sent a message to me. There, she has sent a message to me. Favorites, everything I've favorited. Bookmarks, posts that I have bookmarked so I can find it again. I can make lists. I love lists on Twitter. They don't work the same way here. They are private lists. You can't share them. But if you want to make a list of just entrepreneurial journalism people, for your own purpose, you could make that list and just see them at once. Follow requests is people the system thinks are suspicious or something, but I basically ignore that. Now, here's the one complicated thing. This is called local timeline. This is the one thing that matters when you pick a server, besides whether it's well run and all that, is the local timeline. This is every single post from everyone who uses this server. Now, in this case, Mastodon.social is huge. It's like 100,000 people. So it's pretty much worthless to me. But if you were on journa.host, you would find a feed that is just journalists, which you might find interesting. If you were on epicure.social, you'd find just foodies. So it's an alternative way to look at things, all right? So that does matter in what server you choose. And if you pick something general like Mastodon.world, and then you get hankering for something more specific, you can move. You move your identity, and you move all your followers, your social graph. That's critical philosophically because you cannot move those things from Twitter. They're stuck on Twitter. You cannot move it from Facebook. It's stuck on Facebook. This is what federation and openness and interoperability means as a principle. The one caution is if you move from Mastodon.world to journal.host, the posts you have written stay on Mastodon.world because they have permanent addresses. But you can go back and find them. It's not a big deal. So you can move yourself from one server to another. Son Jake started his own server where he is the only user. He chose to do that, and he moved over to that. Now you also have this option for what is called the federated timeline. That is everybody on the server and everybody they follow and link to. So that's really a lot. And I don't find it terribly useful. You might. Let's see here. Okay. The only other thing to tell you about at this stage, that's another way to get to local. It's another way to get to federated. It's another way to get to settings. Okay, that's all. That's pretty much everything on this page. Now we get to the searching. Mastodon does not have full text search across all of Mastodon. And they did that on purpose because their belief was that it leads to bad behavior. That if you want to find someone to harass, you find them through search. So they disabled search. On my server, there's a search that allows me to search my own posts and things that I boost, but that's all. If I want to search for a person, I can do that. If I want to search for Yoel Roth. Yoel was the guy who was trust and safety at Twitter who tried to stay for 2 weeks and then got the fuck out. So Yoel's a very good guy. So I've already followed Yoel, but his name will come up because I searched for it. It's there. The system knows it. The other thing you can search for is hashtags. And very importantly on Mastodon is it's built around hashtags because that capability is there. I'm not back in the habit of using hashtags a lot. I've got to get in the habit. But if you want to join conversations and start conversations, you use hashtags. And that you can also search for. Okay, last major functional thing to tell you about is posting. So here's the little box where you post. There's a few unusual things about Mastodon. The first is that the character count limit is 500. Generous compared to Twitter. It actually makes a difference, I think, in terms of the quality of conversation. You can just tell they're a little bit longer, they're a little more conversational. I can attach a photo. So I put one on my desktop before of my son's exhausted cats. Now, another important norm of Mastodon is that you are expected, and you will get scolded if you do not, add alt text to images, any kind of image, because it was built, again, for people with disabilities, with different abilities. And so that's an important norm. So I'm going to say, cute, exhausted cats. They did not like the parade that went by my son's window in New Hampshire, and they were tired from it, so I can do that. And then I can say, after Saturday, a cute picture of my son's cats. Now, there's two more norms to get to. This is very important. The CW you see there down there is content warning. This is part of the ethos of Mastodon. People expect some things to be put behind a content warning. I'll show you how it works in a second. But there's no agreement on that. Some people get triggered by eye contact. And so they want photos with eye contact to come with a warning. They get triggered by politics or by talk of Twitter or other things. On the other hand, especially people coming from Black Twitter get angry when they are told to put things about racism behind a content warning, because screw that, I'm not going to protect you from the reality of life. That is the negotiation of norms, and it's fascinating to watch. And some people are dogged about the content warnings. Most people coming from Twitter are not. But here's how it works. So I put a content warning in. I can write the warning here, or you can think of it as a headline. Cat photo. All right? Sorry. And then when I post this, I publish it. It used to say toot, but now it says publish. Notice here it says cat photo, and it says show more. And I can show the text. Now, if I want to edit this post, and this is one of the great things, you can edit a post whenever, whatever. It's not like Twitter where you only get a brief time. Edit this post. I can mark the media as sensitive. I think I can. I used to be able to. Well, I should have done that before, I guess. You can also mark media as sensitive, which would blank that out, and I can click on the photo to see it. This content warning thing is really interesting, as I say, because different people have different interpretations of the norms around them. And so to see what people expect of you is important. The other thing to tell you, and then I'll break for questions, is that you can't quote tweet. You cannot take a post and add your comment atop it and send that. This too is very purposeful. Eugen Rochko, from the beginnings, believed that it led to bad behavior because it was a way, he argues that this is a platform for conversation, and quote tweeting is performative. It's not you having a conversation with the person you've just interacted with. It's me showing off to everybody else how smart I am and digging you. Oh, this is stupid, right? So that's the belief that he has. However, this has become a major point of contention around Black Twitter. Carrie and I had one of the scholars of Black Twitter in our class 2 weeks ago, and I asked her, will there be a Black Mastodon? And she said, as of now, no, because the affordances are not there. Being able to do search, being able to have quote tweets for call and response is part of the culture of not just Twitter, but Black America. And so to not have that there is an issue. There's another brilliant scholar on Twitter who's on Mastodon named Dr. Jonathan Flowers, writes about this a lot, that without that affordance, it makes it difficult to try to even imagine recreating what existed on Black Twitter. And that he further says that the reception that some people have gotten on Mastodon from Black Twitter has not been terribly receptive. And I saw this happen with Dr. Flowers. There's a guy named Adam Curry who was one of the two inventors of podcasting alongside Dave Weiner. And when Dr. Flowers made this point, Adam Curry came in and just said, well, start your own server then. It's open source, you can do whatever you want. And Dr. Flowers said back, well, that's basically a geek's way to say, fuck you. And it's not terribly receptive to what's going on. Eugen Rochko, the founder of Mastodon, said in an interview he did that he's softening on this topic, and he's open to it. And what's interesting is there are already proposals for how to do quote tweets in GitHub to try to get that to be part of the code of Mastodon. And so the affordances are emergent. It's not Elon Musk or Jack Dorsey saying this is what we will have or not have. It is the community in open source saying, I want to propose this. And then the community discusses it to death. And then they decide whether or not to include that in the code. Now, somebody on their own server can create their own version of it that includes some people in the servers bump up the character limit to 1,000. You have the power, it's your server. And if it appears on my screen, it will have a little, read more at the bottom of it. Somebody could create quote tweets on their server, but they probably wouldn't be observed here, but they can test it out. What's really interesting to me is there's the opportunity now, I think, to experiment with and fund that kind of development to see how this might change. Being careful to say that people have built this community since 2016, it's not me who comes in with a big 5 weeks of experience saying I know better. I don't. I have to respect their views, but they also have to respect the perspectives of different online social lived experiences as well. It is a process of negotiating norms. All right. So that's the functionality. The next thing I want to do is how to find people. Do you have any questions on this so far? Jerry? I guess I should, we're recording. No, don't apologize, Jerry.
So you've kind of addressed this already, but let me ask the question in a different way, or to make sure that I have it straight. In terms of community norms then, they seem to start at the server level, right? It's almost akin to an administrator on a Facebook page. I know it's not a perfect analogy there. Or
Reddit.
Or Reddit, right? And so in terms of the federation, like, do the people who are the administrators of the servers all come together? Is there a place for that to happen?
Not in that way. The way that happens is that so the one person put up a proposal. You want to get Jeremy next? Okay, I'll come up here. So there's a proposal to do quote tweets in a limited way, that you can only quote tweet those who gave you permission to quote tweet them, right? That's a proposal. It's on GitHub. So that will get discussed on GitHub. And like all open source projects, at the end of the day, there has to be kind of one person or one group that says yay or nay, but it's been informed by tremendous conversation, like Wikipedia. So what's interesting to me about this is what does that imply for our architecture of journalism and how we do things, right? How do we imagine a GitHub-like structure where the community can propose things to us and we listen? We don't have that, but open source does. That's what makes this interesting. So that's the form in which they would discuss this. Jeremy?
Thanks for this so far. It's super helpful. I'm curious about.
By the way, this is the first time in history that I got to a tool before Jeremy did. I want that noted.
I'm sure there are many others.
No.
So I'm curious how it plugs into other services or how it might in the future. So, Twitterific or Hootsuite, people are using Buffer to send tweets by using an app or to send tweets automatically. They're also using other things like IFTTT to sort of pull all hashtags into a spreadsheet and so forth. So it's sort of integrated Twitter. Those tools kind of have integrated Twitter through its open APIs. I'm curious if there's already that process setting up or if you think that'll happen in the future.
There is one tool that allows you to retweet your tweets from Twitter onto Mastodon. It is not popular with people because we don't leave your shit there, people, and do things original here. I would like to have a version of Nuzzle here. I would like, because this is the most important thing, I left it out. There is no algorithm. There is no algorithm. So when I see my home feed up there, that is just in reverse chronological order, all the people I follow posting, period. So when I wake up in the morning and I want to say, what did I miss? That was an advantage to the Twitter algorithm, in my view, but it's gone. And the belief there too is algorithms are evil. Well, if they're done badly for the wrong reasons, they can be. But I saw one guy code up a thing for himself that goes in to look at all the people he follows and has a formula to say who should he boost up to himself. I said, oh, I'd love to have that. Well, that can go on GitHub. That could go to my server. My own server could offer that as a service. And those kinds of things can happen. All right, let me give you now the other hard part, which is how to find people. You can, once you're on, you can go to anybody's profile who's on your server, and you can simply see whom do they follow. So here's a list. Where the hell's the bar? The scroll bar. There it is. All right. You can see who I follow, right? And next to those names would not be purple. They'd be gray, and you could click on them and follow people. So that's one way to find people. Then there are some fascinating things. There's a service called Debirdify to detweet you. And it will go in to the profiles of everyone you follow or the lists you follow. I won't do it right now. or your lists. I have a COVID list, I have a book history wonks list. It will go in and search all of them and find anybody who has a Mastodon-like address in their profile. It's @ username, @ server. So we'll find all of those and then let you follow them. You can follow them in two ways. On Debirdify, you get a CSV file. All of our students know what CSVs are, so we're okay there. And what you can do then is go to your preferences, and then under import and export, again, this is interoperable, this is open, it's meant for you to take things and move things. So I can go to import, I've uploaded that file, I merge them in my existing folder, which is to say that if it's duplicate, it won't bother, and I upload. And so that way I can get tons of people. So there's some really interesting things here. Nope. There, nope, this. So for example, this is a page on GitHub. This is in my post, I linked to this, for academics on Mastodon, and we're gonna pretend like we're actually academics today. So it has curated account lists. So these are lists of people who are on Mastodon that people can contribute their own names to, that are maintained. There's one here for journalists. It has more than 1,000 people on it. I would not follow the whole list unless you really are into hot takes. There's one here, there's historians, there's book historians, there's all kinds of interesting things here. So you can go to one of those lists, take the CSV folder file. If it's a mess, just take all the Mastodon addresses, put it in a new spreadsheet, save as CSV, import that CSV into your Mastodon, boom, you have a lot of new friends. It's very easy to get people in a lump like that. There's another tool that I quite like that I discovered after writing that post, but I added in an addendum, called Mastodon. Really dumb names. Mastodon.org does the same function, but rather than giving you a CSV, it gives you a list of everyone it found who has a Mastodon address among your followers, and then a button to follow. So it's really, you can kind of rake through your followers. So this way, you can start to get a decent number of followers. That, I want to talk about the architectural stuff more now, but that, I hope, is a complete introduction to using Mastodon. Questions? Concerns? Worries? Anything? Nobody?
Why do they run out of capacity? So I'm sorry, I have very basic questions.
Yeah, no.
And what happens if they are all already out of capacity?
It's the decision of the host how much they want to spend on storage. So I'm on the podcast This Week in Google on the Twit network, and Leo Laporte, who runs that network, has his own server called twit.social. And it was going along for a couple of years, and he had a few hundred people, and it was fine. And then when Musk came, boom. So he closed it down to only people who belong to his club now. Because what happens is when I put a photo up, that photo I put up of my son's cats is now on Eugen Rochko's server forever. So he's got to store that for me. And so the expense is that as much as anything else. There are services, there are a lot of services out there where it's like Amazon AWS. Rather than you doing your own server, as my son did, you could go to a service and say, I want one, and it's all pre-built, and you just do it. It's the kind of thing we used to teach around WordPress, right? It's an instance of your own. So that's how Journo.host started. They have a French host for their hosting. And there's some argument that institutions, newspapers and schools and such, should create their own instances. I'm not going to recommend that for us because we're busy. We're small, don't worry. Well, compared to University of Michigan, right? Now, the advantage of having your own instance, if you're the New York Times and you have your own instance, and I see that, or New Yorker, if New Yorker had its instance and I saw Graciela at newyorker.social, then I know because they put you there, you're really the New Yorker. And that's one way to verify you. Let's go into the whole blue check verified stuff at Twitter, right? That's bullshit. It's worse bullshit now. But that was centralized verification. So one way to verify people is by the server you're on. So if the New Yorker started a server and they only allowed their own staff on it, that doesn't grow big, not bad. I talked to the CEO of San Francisco Standard, and when I said, hey, I wish news organizations would do this, he said, okay, I'm doing it. And he did one for his staff. I think it's 4 or 5 news sites, including Rest of World, Sophie Schmidt's site, which I think is great. They have a server for their staff. Now, part of the question is, should a local news organization start a server for their community? SFBA.social is San Francisco Bay Area.social, and so that's for people around the San Francisco area. And again, that local timeline will have people who are local, and that's interesting. It's another way to view all of this. One other thing about verification. I'm not going to go into detail on this because it's really wonky, and plus I can't really teach it, but Jeremy could, because I can't. If you go to my profile, you see that you have 4 opportunities to say who you are with links. So my Medium, my Twitter, my school. Then here's my blog. You notice that one's green. The reason that one is green is because I put on my blog page in the HTML behind it, rel equals me, which is a standard for saying that's me. And then I tell this site, look at that site. That way, Mastodon verifies that Jeff Jarvis controls both this account and that site. And it says he really is Mr. Buzzmachine. So that's another way to verify. Journa.host is verifying by having people say, prove who you are, let me see your email, let me see what you've written. That's manual as hell and difficult. But the problem of verification is going to be around on Mastodon because there is no central authority for this. Sorry, that wasn't the answer to your question. But what happens is there's labor then, right? So Journa.host has the expense of the hosting and the storage and all that, plus the expense of effort of having all these volunteers verifying people and moderating.
I have another question about language, because do you have a sense of how is this being used in other languages, particularly Spanish? But
Because you have a proprietary interest. Yes, and so notice there's on the posting part, there's this little EN here. I can declare the language of the post, so the system knows it. And then I follow a lot, I follow a few people in Spanish, I follow lots of people in German. Watch, there's not gonna be a single one. There we go. Von Ende über Pasok bis Syria, okay? So I can go right here, translate. Boom, translated. So this makes me very happy I follow people in multiple languages that I would have no hope of understanding, since my Spanish is so malo. I can include those in here and many languages. It's a really neat feature to it. Jerry.
So who owns the content then? If you put it on somebody else's server, can somebody take that photo and put it on a cat food commercial? And then the other part of this too is, as journalists, is any of the material there embeddable at this point?
I think copyright would be just something that's declared, and I don't know. There is another norm of old Mastodon, old being 6 weeks ago, is some believe that journalists are pariah here, and like Journa.host has been blocked by some places. Aus.social, which is an Australian site, hates journalists. Fuck you, we're blocking you, because they let one conservative in. They can do, which is a problem with this, right? There are others who believe that journalists are pariah because they quote people without their permission. So I'm talking with Adam Davidson from Journa.host about doing a covenant with the public about our standards. They're his standards. I'm not on a Journa.host. But of what is. And so what we would be saying in this is likely, we believe what's public is public, and as journalists, we will quote that. You may not like it, but we'll do that. Some will hate that and block the server as a result and say, you can't see me. And that's how these kind of things get negotiated. Does that make any sense? Any other questions? All right, we're almost done. Let me just, I actually covered a lot of this before. The questions that I'm starting to just grapple with are, one, what happens from other services? I haven't announced this yet. We haven't announced this yet because it's not set, but I'm trying to set up an event with 4 scholars of Black Twitter and others, journalists and funders and developers, to discuss what might be necessary, if possible, if Twitter just completely implodes. But importantly, a lot of folks on Black Twitter say, I'm not giving up. One of the people, scholars I respect most in this field is Andre Brock Jr., who wrote a book called Distributed Blackness. And Dre says, we fought too hard for this, too long for this, to create this place that is ours to live our life, not under white gaze. And it's not replicable overnight. You can't just plop it up and over. The other scholar who talked to our class last week, who I won't name for a reason that will become apparent, basically said the same thing. Jonathan Flowers is here trying to understand this, and he's pointing out all the problems that exist. He's a fascinating follow, because he writes long things in here to understand that. So a few lessons from this. One is the affordances of technology make a difference. Who would have thought when so many things in Twitter were invented emergently by the users, right? There was no @ sign at the beginning. That was invented by a user. There was no hashtag. That was invented by a user. Same with quote tweet. That affordance was invented by users and became vital to a community there. And Eugen Rochko says, but it's damaging. And a community says, but we need that. And that is the negotiation of both norms and affordances. And how that operates is really interesting to watch, and I think important for us to consider as journalists. The second thing I'm trying to get my head around is, what does this federated architecture mean? We in media have always been centralized, right? We have one newsroom, one printing press, one broadcast tower. We put out what we put out based on what we do. Well, what does a federated architecture look like? This afternoon, I'm talking to the board at KPCC in LA, and they warned me that the board is not very sophisticated, so don't even bother bringing up Mastodon, Jeff. But as I think about LA, it's a federation. It's a giant Venn diagram of communities that are not just local geographically, but are local. The Persian community of LA is huge and cuts across many geographies and many interests and different politics, right? So what does that look like in an engagement journalism world? What might we learn from the architecture of Mastodon and how that operates? And Jeremy, you asked something before that I said I would get to it. I didn't. I lied, so I will now. Importantly, Mastodon is just one branch of a tree called ActivityPub down here. ActivityPub is an open protocol, and all these things are built on it. So there's Mastodon up there. Over here in the yellow is PixelFed. Smock left, but I'll brainwash him into using this. It is the Instagram without Zuck. It is connected to Mastodon. It's separate from Mastodon, but if John is on PixelFed, I can follow him on Mastodon because it is federated, because it is standard, because it is built all on ActivityPub. PeerTube is a similar version of YouTube in the open world. Write Freely is a writing platform. You notice down here at the very bottom, WordPress, with a plugin, you can make your WordPress blog as if it were an account on Mastodon, and people could follow your blog. And every time you blogged, it would come into my feed on Mastodon. So this structure is about federation, interoperability, openness. And also, and I'll end here, it's about protocols versus platforms. There's an excellent, if you're interested in this, there's an excellent post from Mike Masnick at TechDirt at Columbia. He wrote it for them. Protocols, not platforms, a technological approach to free speech. This is linked in my post, in my second post. The internet in the earliest days was built on protocols. Right? Email is a protocol. HTTP is a protocol. You can have your own browser, you can have your own email client, and it all operates seamlessly. That wasn't the case with social. Social was on platforms, not protocols. This is an effort to bring protocols to social and creation and sharing photos and all of that, so that we can create these kinds of services around a standard. What would journalism look like in that world? There are some competing protocols that may work together coming up called, what is called Blue Sky, which Jack Dorsey at Twitter got funded before he left, and it's separately funded from Musk, thank goodness, run by a brilliant technologist named Jay Graber, and she is building an open structure similarly. My hope is it would federate with Mastodon, but it has some different views of identity. There's another one called Scuttlebutt. A great guy named Rabble, now living in New Zealand, was one of the original engineers on Twitter. He's working on that. And so if we try to hold services to account for being open, federated, distributed, and interoperable, to give us control of our identities and our social graphs and our content so that we can export everything and import it elsewhere, that's a vision for the future of social. Now, on the contrary, you might have heard about Post.news. Has anyone signed up for the waiting list? Have you gotten in yet? So, full disclosure, this is started by Noam Barden, who was the founder of Waze. So, hell, Waze. It saves me hours every day. He called me out of nowhere some months ago and said he was starting this, and would I come by and talk? And then he asked me to be an advisor. I have left the advisory board. I never received anything from it. I have no official association right now because it's not federated. It's another effort to do a new Twitter that's centralized. He also put somebody on the advisory board I can't bear, so I just said, bye. I wish him well, but I find this shruggable. It's nothing but a feed of things like this, which looks familiar, it looks like Twitter. The discussion about posts is not part of the feed, it is separate. It is, it's like the old days of newspaper comments on articles. Oh, let me go to mine. So it has a comment structure. Come on. Well, it's not doing it. It has a comment structure under each post. So the conversation is separated from the feed. So I'm not crazy about post. I'll use it. I'm going to try to check it out and see how he does. He's going to add to it. He's going to make differences. And Noam is brilliant. So we'll see what goes there. Also controversial is he got investment from Mark Andreessen, who's controversial in many quarters. So that's all I have to say. Any questions? Fears, doubts, trepidations? Anything? Yeah. Who pays for all this? Who pays for Mastodon? So, great question. I should have hit that. Volunteers. So, Eugen Rochko. There must be some financing behind it. I'm repeating for the microphone. Basically, no. So Eugen Rochko, let me back up. So if you go to twit.social, my friend Leo Laporte, his server, he asks you to give on Patreon. The expense of running a server is not that great. It's hundreds of dollars a month until it grows too big. Then it can become thousands, right? But if you run a small instance, if we were to have one for our school, which we're not going to because it's a pain in the ass, we have too much to do, the expense would be fairly minimal. It'd be $200 a month, something like that. So if you have a small community and you get your community to pay, that's how that funds each of the servers. Now, Mastodon as a whole, right, Eugen has a Patreon, which because I'm on his server, Mastodon.social is Eugen's server, I went to Patreon and I'm contributing $120 a year. And his funding is enough that he does this as a full-time job and he pays his technical fees and so on and so forth. It's part of the value of distribution. Here's the other part about this. This is why if you're the New York Times or if you're the Daily News or if you're the Podunk Daily Disgrace, one reason to run a server is so that you can have your own staff on it. Another one might be to have your community on it, but another is to share the load. And so people yell at me for staying on Mastodon.social because it's huge, but I'm just lazy and I want to see how it operates. I should move to a smaller server because then that helps share the load across. And then each server, each of the 7,500 servers doesn't have an unbearable weight upon it, okay? But this is also the beauty of open source and not-for-profit, right? The coding is all coming from volunteers. It's all free.
It's limitless. There could be millions of servers.
Yes. One question is how well does this scale? What does happen? But so far it has worked pretty damn well. On Mastodon.social, which got crushed after Musk took over, there were 2 days where it was just slow, unlike the early days of Twitter and the fail whale where it was just down. It never went down for me. It just slowed down for an hour until they were upgrading something and it came back. It's been incredibly resilient. It has gained, it now has 2 million, it went from a few 100,000 to 2 million daily users and 8 million total users in a matter of 3 weeks. And it's held up. Other questions, challenges? Yeah. Thank you.
So one of the impressive things about Twitter has been the fact that you could go online and just by checking what's trending, you can find out about massacres in Iran and Myanmar and other countries. What are the possibilities of something like that going viral on Mastodon?
Good question, great question, which as you know is a professor's way to buy time to come up with an answer. A few answers. One, there is a version of trending here, which I didn't show you. If I go to this menu and explore, I go to explore and then I can see hashtags that are trending. So Mundog means it's dog day on Monday, right? These tend to be those kind of very social things, but you could see a news thing happen here. You could see posts that are generally popular against this federated world. It does pull out news headlines, so I can see that, but that's a little behind the times. The real essence of your question is, without quote tweets, without trending, without the algorithm, can something go viral? Yes, it can. Maybe not as fast, maybe not as voluminous, but if something catches on with people, it will. And the argument is that's a better way to do it than to depend upon an algorithm. I'm not against algorithms. Some demonize them, but I think they have value if they're written well and for the right purposes. But the algorithm does help virality, no question about it. Trending on Twitter has often been bullshit, right? People game it, so at least you kind of get away from that. The real question, the real test to me is, could Black Lives Matter or Me Too have existed on Mastodon? We don't know yet. I think it could. I think it could get sufficient weight of just people upon people upon people. But we're going to have to see. Any other questions? Thank you all for your kind attention.